as we had mentioned, President Biden is making a really significant trip this week. He's going to fly to San Francisco. He will attend the APEC Leader Summit. It's an economic summit. But the big deal is tomorrow. That's when Biden holds a much anticipated meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Joining us now, Washington Post foreign policy columnist Josh Rogin. Josh, great to have you on. President Biden really deeply believes, Phil knows this very well from covering the Biden White House, when you sit with someone face to face, you accomplish things you can't otherwise accomplish. And he's known Xi Jinping for a very, very long time. What is the best hope that the White House can get out of this after Jake Sullivan said over the weekend, look, we have to just reopen the lines of communication here?
Right. Well, you're absolutely right, Poppy. For his entire career, President Biden has believed that foreign policy is personal, that if he just gets into the room with these leaders, good or bad, that he can connect with them and make a relationship and convince them to do good things instead of bad things and make deals that you otherwise wouldn't be able to make. Funnily enough, that's exactly what President Trump thought. And President Trump pursued a very similar strategy with Xi Jinping. He thought they were friends. They signed a fentanyl deal in 2019. I don't know if you remember, where Xi Jinping promised to curb the transfer of dangerous drugs to America in exchange for trade concessions. And Trump thought their friendship would really seal the deal. Well, it didn't work out, okay, because Xi Jinping doesn't feel that way, because the Chinese system doesn't work that way, and because their policies are not going to change based on this one meeting. I hear they're going to sign another fentanyl agreement in exchange for some economic cooling off, and I'm sure both sides will present that as progress, but it's not. And that's the bottom line here, is that they're going to meet for 4 hours. They set a bar that's so low that communication is the goal, and they will achieve that bar. But in terms of solving any of the problems in the U.S. China relationship, addressing China's economic aggression, its military expansion, its internal repression, its problem with all of its other neighbors who will also be there in San Francisco, 20-something Asian countries, no real progress at all. So, if talking is better than not talking, as Winston Churchill said, jaw is better than war. But if you set the bar that low, then that's not really an improvement in U.S. China relations. That's just stopping it from getting worse fast.
Which, I mean, honestly, even if the bar is low, to be able to exceed that, especially given where relations have been over the course of the last 11, 12 months, probably isn't a terrible thing. Can you assess where the bilateral relationship is? It was so bad for so many months of 2023, seems to have cooled off a little bit. Where does it actually stand?
Right. I mean, you're exactly right, Phil. I mean, all you have to do is watch Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo's interview with CNN's Christiane Amanpour. Excellent interview. I encourage everybody to watch it. And what Gina Raimondo said is it's time to lower the temperature in the relationship. It speaks to what you just said, Phil. Well, it was hot. Now it's going to get cool. The problem is that the goal, in my view at least, the goal of U.S.-China relations is not to have a low temperature. It's not to get along. The point is to protect U.S. values and interests and to work with our partners to respond to the threats and challenges that China presents as it rises, where they affect us. So for the first 2 years of the Biden administration, I think you had this really competitive policy led by people like Tony Blinken and Jake Sullivan, which was like, oh, we're going to solve some of these problems by being pretty tough with the Chinese, not as rude and obnoxious as the Trump people, but it's still pretty tough. Now we're here in year 3. It's a political cycle, and now the ball has been handed to the economic officials, which is what the Chinese want. And now you have Janet Yellen and Gina Raimondo saying, okay, well, listen, we got to turn down the temperature.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they'll be able to turn down the temperature, but I worry that doesn't solve the problems. That's my view.
And Gina Raimondo went. I mean, she went a couple of months ago,
Sure.
saying first, I think, one in her position for 5 years to go and saying it's important to be there.
Yeah.
Josh, just to talk about the big picture here, Biden goes into this meeting with extraordinarily low poll numbers and multiple world crises. The Israel-Hamas war, dealing with the civilian casualties now, both in Israel, but also now in Gaza, dealing with the ongoing war on Ukraine, and Iran's 52 attacks on U.S. service members and posts now since October 7th. And when you think about the relationship between China and Iran, how does he navigate that tomorrow?
Right. Well, I think one of the useful things you can do when sitting down with Xi Jinping is you can talk to him about all these other issues: Ukraine, Iran, the Israel-Hamas war, all of it. And China's a world power, the second biggest country economy in the world, second biggest military in the world. they deserve to be treated with respect. Don't get me wrong. We want good relations with China. Don't get me wrong. We want good trade relations with China. But it takes two to tango, Poppy. So what you're going to have is the President of the United States tell Xi Jinping, well, we really want you to, tell Iran to stop being so bad. We really appreciate it if you tell Putin not to be so bad in Ukraine. And Xi Jinping will have his own list of grievances, some of which are absolutely valid. And for both sides, it makes political sense to have this meeting. They can go back to their countries and say, hey, we talked. I told them the tough messages, and I got an agreement that things are going to get better. And it makes sense politically. I get why Biden is doing this. I don't think it's bad to talk. That's not what I'm trying to say. All I'm trying to say is this is a political exercise more than a diplomatic exercise. And they both get something politically out of it. But the structural problems in the U.S. China relationship are only going to get worse. And I think the relationship is just going to get worse before it gets better. But let's be optimistic. Maybe they'll surprise us and come up with something that I can't even predict.
We will take that glass half full at the end.
Sure.
Josh Rogin, appreciate it. Thanks
buddy.
very much.